On the day when Mark Randolph found out that he would soon lose his job, he suddenly realized that he had been working hard for others his whole life and lacked a sense of deep involvement. It was then that he thought, why not start his own business? But he had no idea what to do. At the time, Randolph was working for Pure Software, a company founded by Reed Hastings, who came from an aristocratic family. In late 1996, Hastings blew up the company saying he was getting rid of dead weight, so they both found themselves out of work. After this, Hastings became super rich and planned to invest his money in a decent idea. Randolph somehow caught wind of this and began to spend hours looking for a good idea. After tossing around various options in his head, he suddenly came up with the idea of renting movies on DVD through the internet. And it just so happened that this niche was completely untapped because bloated VHS rental companies felt pretty good about themselves and DVDs had just appeared, as if they were made just for this purpose. Hastings was hooked on the idea because he realized that people didn't want to get off their couches to go to a rental store. Plus, he was annoyed by the stupid, super idiotic late fees on tapes that amounted to $1.40. At times like these, he felt like a complete idiot. So they were inspired and decided to send a disc through the mail to themselves to see if the fragile package could withstand rough postal transport. And snap! The disc arrived back completely unscathed. Perfect! Now it was necessary to find investors and make them believe. To do this, it was just necessary to show them something. But it was not so easy. Nowadays, you can put together a website in a couple of hours, drive traffic to it, and immediately evaluate sales. But in 1997, none of this existed, and to create a website, you had to separately hire a programmer. Moreover, you needed your own server, the ability to accept credit cards, an analytics system, an office, and a bunch of other things. It was clear as day that all of this required money. A lot of money. The idea was valued at $3 million. Hastings was a rich guy, but there was a kind of established principle in startup circles. Use other people's money to start the company. Otherwise, you shame the great Silicon Valley. You dedicate your whole life to the idea and let others open their wallets for it. But the main thing was that asking for money meant hearing criticism. And the first criticism that Hastings and Randolph heard tore them to shreds. They went to investor Alexander Balkanski, the owner of C-Cube Microsystems. This company created software for converting analog video to digital. It seemed like a super ideal partner, but at the meeting, Balkanski said something like, "DVDs are a one-day wonder. There's no point in storing movies on a piece of plastic. People will be downloading them directly from the internet. In short, your idea is complete rubbish." And Randolph replied, "Well, that won't happen for at least 5 years. And Balkanski said to him, "Why on earth should I invest in a company that will go bust in 5 years or even earlier? In short, there's no money, but good luck." This reaction hit Hastings and Randolph hard and scared them half to death. But Balkanski was right. Arguing with him would have been a losing battle, as it was his field of expertise. Other investors at the time were also not really getting it. Why would people bother searching around on some internet when there are rental stores everywhere? In the end, they couldn't scrape together other people's money. So Hastings himself put in a couple of $1,000,000 from his own pocket, and his share was 70%. Everyone was happy. One guy had money, the other had plenty of time. Everything was happening not by days, but by hours. They rented some super cheap office that looked like a basement of a computer hacker. Wires were sticking out everywhere. In general, they invested money not in comfort, but in technology, stocked up on computers and servers. The startup had an atmosphere of a laboratory with crazy scientists. There was no clear schedule or agreed meetings, and employees came in whenever they wanted. The team consisted of just 9 people. They were all willing to work hard not for comfort, but for the idea, and agreed to a super low salary. Randolph, being a kind soul, from the very beginning enveloped everyone in a friendly atmosphere where everyone had the right to their own opinion, instead of behaving like a lord giving orders to slaves. He wanted to form a team of free-thinking people who were beyond the bounds. And he unexpectedly found one such employee where he least expected it. As Randolph had absolutely no experience in film rental, he decided to test the waters and delve deeper into this mysterious sphere by attending the Entertainment Expo, VSDA, where film traders and all sorts of characters hung out. There, he suddenly struck up a friendship with the owner of a small video rental chain named Mitch Lowe. This Lowe turned out to be a walking encyclopedia of knowledge about movies, having worked 13,000 hours behind his own store counters, observing what, why, and how customers were attracted. He absolutely adored movies and could even anticipate customers' desires in advance. He joined the team and began giving wise advice on website creation so that the site could also anticipate visitors' wishes. The website was built from scratch. Surprisingly, the work of transmitting information from the server to the client, rendering the interface, content management system, credit card delivery, and usage brought so much satisfaction to the programmers that the exhausting hours of coding seemed like a game. Marketing and technology suddenly merged together in such a pervasive orgasm that no one had ever encountered before. By the way, the name Netflix was invented by combining two words: net, which means internet, and flicks, which means movies. This name seemed to suggest something obscene, but everyone liked it so much that they left it for beauty. In the pursuit of creating a very extensive library, sometimes even weeks were spent searching for just one copy of a super rare movie. When a visitor wanders around the shelves, choosing some cassette from the shelf, there is already a super spectacular picture and description that the manufacturers have already drawn. But Netflix had no pictures or descriptions. A proprietary database was required, but it was out of the question to create such a gigantic database from scratch. After all, only a pitiful dozen employees were available who were already overwhelmed with work. Fortunately, there already existed a super detailed catalog of all movies ever created on the movie lover website, allmovie.com. However, the owner of this catalog, Michael Erlewine, had no desire to collaborate and, as a cunning bug, constantly evaded cooperation. So Randolph personally went to his office. This Erlewine made a whole bunch of demands. He was paranoid about his favorite data. He even wanted to add them personally and be the owner of all this information. But for Netflix, this was unacceptable. What if this freak suddenly got upset about something and left Netflix high and dry? Erlewine sat on his catalog like it was a treasure trove and didn't want anyone to take it away from him. Moreover, he wanted Netflix to pay him even for providing information about movies from DVD discs. Randolph hated this idiotic contract with Erlewine, but he still had to sign it because time was pressing and the site had to be launched yesterday, and he needed a decent database for it. It took weeks to match these gigantic data with the discs. The team spent hundreds of painful hours comparing the descriptions from Erlewine's database for each of the 925 movies stored in Netflix's warehouse. By the way, this was the largest selection of DVDs in the country at that time. To make matters worse, in addition to descriptions, pictures were also required. Movie studios did not give permission to use the covers of their films. They were furious about the insatiable retail traders, uninvited guests who risked nothing, but at the same time sucked all the profit out of the film industry like leeches. However, Netflix still decided to pocket their photos and then wait for complaints, without even being particularly ashamed. To make a loud statement about themselves, they gathered various reporters for months so that society would learn about their super unique project of renting not old VHS crap, but super modern DVDs that you don't even need to go anywhere for, don't have to stand in lines for, and don't even have to pay for returning the disc. And if you don't want to rent, you can simply buy it. In short, everything was for the customer. They also created bots and spread a lot of discussions and announcements on the internet in various forums, boards, and groups about the supposedly new and extremely good service that you must try. Finally, on April 14th, 1998, they launched their website. And within a few minutes of its launch, orders were pouring in like crazy. But the happiness didn't last long. Suddenly, after an hour and a half, the servers crashed. They had only 2 miserable computers that crashed immediately from the load. They should have stocked up on additional ones in advance, but superstitious Randolph was afraid of jinxing it, believing that if you buy too much beer for a party, nobody will come. Hastings was out of the loop during all of this. After selling pure software, he still couldn't understand the meaning of life. And he tried to find that meaning by studying at Stanford Graduate School. Many employees didn't even really know him. He only came to serious meetings to consult. Anyway, an additional 8 new computers were purchased within an hour. Everything started working again, and the orders poured in again like a river. But after 40 minutes, the servers crashed again, so they had to rush back to the store. Even the printer couldn't handle the powerful stream of orders and jammed. Everyone who was free rushed to help with the orders, which came pouring in every time the site started working in any way. The site was down all day. As a result, by night, they had received over 100 orders for about 500 disks. 2 months after the launch, they had already stocked 24 servers. 4 months later, they sent and returned 20,000 disks, and the monthly income reached a whopping $100,000. But the problem was that all of this profit came from sales, not rentals. People just simply bought the disks. And for some reason, renting was not popular. As it turned out, at first it was difficult to find any more or less effective ways to reach the audience. And in order to directly reach the owners of DVD players, Randolph suddenly decided to try a traditional marketing tactic. He went to a consumer electronics show, where Toshiba, Sony, and Panasonic were all present, controlling 90% of the DVD market. And he said something mysterious to them like, "What if I eliminate all the obstacles to the sale of your DVD players at once?" The essence of this brilliant proposal was to attach a coupon for a free rental of 3 discs from Netflix's assortment to each player, and customers would supposedly be more willing to buy players. But the manufacturers naturally responded with skepticism. For a long time, there was no response from them at all, and only after 2 months, Toshiba suddenly agreed. It turned out that they were always second-rate in sales after the giant Sony, but they needed to compete on equal terms with the ubiquitous Sony, so they agreed. And then, to Randolph's delight, traffic from them poured in within a few days. This deal with Toshiba opened the doors to HP and even Apple, as their super elite laptops also had DVD drives. And as soon as Sony saw all of this, they also rushed to partner. Only they demanded not 3, but a whopping 10 free rental discs and 5 more for free. God knows such audacity would have made anyone's ears wilt, as it meant losses of hundreds of dollars on just one customer. But for sentimental Randolph, the opportunity to work with Sony was too good to miss. But that's okay. The main problem was that the customers who received the free discs did not return them for some reason. To exist solely on sales was risky. Very much so. After all, Amazon and Walmart were already breathing down their necks, and it was only a matter of time before they too started selling DVD discs in bulk. And once everyone started pushing the same product at the same price, reducing profits to zero became inevitable no matter how you looked at it. For one player, this market was too appetizing. Jeff Bezos had already set his sights on buying an existing business, and his gaze had fallen on Netflix. He offered approximately $15 million. Randolph was not ready to park the business and hand over the keys to someone else forever, because Netflix had huge potential. But refusal naturally meant fierce competition, and competing with this super-efficient Bezos in sales was practically impossible. They had to somehow work it out, and Randolph proposed a partnership. In the end, they discussed and agreed to redirect clients to each other, and by the way, this friendship increased Netflix's credibility. The reports showed that 99% of the profits came only from sales, and rentals were not going well under any circumstances. No matter how hard they tried to retain customers, nothing worked. Randolph was feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. These customers who came on promotion turned out to be freeloaders. Only 5% of them returned. Why these dull customers never came back, Randolph couldn't find an answer to that question. He did everything he could to keep the business afloat while this mess continued. He had super untested technology in the super unexplored world of online trading. They urgently needed to solve this customer retention problem and get out of the disc sales as quickly as possible before the big players came and ruined everything. After all, the money was running out in the bank. Suddenly, at this time, DVD player prices began to drop, and they became the fastest-selling product. And inside millions of these boxes with players were those same Netflix coupons, like tiny time bombs waiting for their hour to completely destroy the already exhausted company. In general, they went begging for money again and turned to institutional venture partners, IVP. But since Netflix still hadn't learned how to make money, no self-respecting investor would invest in this mess. After all, customers were getting away with it for just $300. But despite such poor forecasts, the guys from IVP agreed to finance, all thanks to Hastings' super authority. He was like an angel from heaven in investor circles, even back in 1998, when his company Pure Software went public. When Hastings entered the room, investors immediately opened their wallets because he was the clear guy who solved the unsolvable. However, the $6 million received barely lasted until the end of the year. This insatiable free rental by coupons ate up all the money again. In the end, in 1998, Netflix suffered losses of up to $11 million. The speed at which they were losing money was alarming. Randolph even invented his own A/B testing system and began to use it everywhere, measuring and measuring everything he could. He even measured such nonsense that not every scientist could. And all in order to somehow understand why the site was like a pass-through yard where people didn't stay. He conducted a bunch of different experiments on website visitors, but still didn't get it, and it was disheartening. Randolph's strategic intuition was faltering, and Hastings was losing patience, as they had already poured all their money down the drain. Hastings was worried about Randolph's decisions in such a difficult moment when the company was still so small. That's why Hastings started spending more time in the office. Besides, he was disappointed in the dull salespeople from the education sector who only cared about money and political intrigues, where everyone was hiding everything from each other. Investors didn't give a damn about Randolph. To them, he was like a worm that just got in the way. They believed in Hastings because he promised to personally steer the business. That's why Hastings snapped his fingers and replaced Randolph, just like that. And now Randolph wasn't the CEO anymore, just the president. Randolph was angry and hurt. He felt like they were taking away his brainchild. But deep down, he still understood that Hastings was right and he didn't have any hidden motives, as Hastings was guided by the interests of the business. Although it infuriated Randolph, he was still happy to dance to someone else's tune and remain in the company as someone, and the investors immediately started sleeping soundly. By the way, Hastings and Randolph didn't even get mad at each other. On the contrary, some chemistry was between them that charged others. They became like yin and yang, disciplined reason and chaotic intuition. Just at that time, when Netflix ran out of money in early 1999, French luxury goods magnate Bernard Arnault shelled out a whopping $30 million, and all thanks to the fact that Hastings was a rock star in the world of investors. Then, he also scrounged up $100 million from other investors somewhere, and all that money allowed Hastings to start reprogramming the company culture in his own image and likeness. The thing is, it turns out that even in prehistoric times, when his first business grew to 700 people, it became really difficult because it was impossible to keep track of everyone, and there were always some scoundrels who messed something up or loafers who were hanging around. Even some newbie could pull off such tricks that hit the pocketbook really hard. So, Hastings naturally began to introduce new rules and prohibitions so that they would think less, work more, and not grumble. And it got to the point where the business was completely covered with this fierce total control, worse than even the communists. And in general, they gradually became all bureaucratic. And this control makes them ask for permission for any little fart. And this crap suffocates the creative atmosphere. And of course, from all this trash, a very suffocating atmosphere was formed. Talented rebels loners packed their bags far away from this nonsense. Only robots were left, who followed instructions precisely. And with these soulless robots, they eventually got completely screwed in terms of innovation and creativity. And the world was changing rapidly, and they were all stuck in one place. So, in creating Netflix's culture, Hastings did the opposite, betting on freedom and creativity. People began to make interesting decisions on their own, even without asking for permission. Usually, companies treat people like children, but Randolph from the very beginning treated all employees as if they were adults. The more power an employee has over their own project, the more responsibility they feel, and they begin to sincerely care about the result. And their actions become more thought out and balanced. Also, Hastings and Randolph found that if they throw away all this polite nonsense and speak their minds directly, they become much more effective right away. Sometimes it came to almost fighting, and this extreme honesty spread throughout the team. Explosive discussions kept everyone on edge. The combination of honesty and freedom worked like a magic wand. People liked that they were trusted. Although beloved by everyone, Hastings took the helm, but it was still all for naught. The main problem remained unresolved. No one wanted to rent DVDs. They tried everything: prize giveaways, promotions, and various packages. They even tinkered with the website design countless times. But sales never materialized, and without sales, money leaked through their fingers, leading the company to exhaustion. Randolph's decision to push discs through Amazon only worsened the situation. Thousands of customers migrated there, with only hundreds returning. By the summer of 1999, looking at tens of thousands of unused and unviewed discs, Randolph suddenly thought, why not store all these discs directly at customers' homes and let them keep them as long as they want? This idea was packaged as a subscription. You can take any 4 movies, and if you want more, you will receive the next ones as soon as you return the previous ones. And you can do it as many times as you want, and all this for $20 a month. And by the way, no more stupid fines. As soon as this offer was launched, bam! On the very first day, 90% of people who clicked on the banner left their credit card details, and off it went. Day by day, the number of subscribers grew like crazy. People happily shelled out money for an online subscription, which was 5 times more expensive than regular rentals. It was madness, because these people weren't paying for the movies, they were paying for the ability to watch them. At that time, this idea just didn't make sense. People didn't just like it, they loved it. It turned the rules of the game upside down and put competitors in a super disadvantageous position. After all, regular stores were still hesitant to sell DVDs. And in the end, the tiny and still unknown Netflix suddenly became a super threat to everyone else, changing the rules of the game in the market. As the subscription model developed, they themselves began to suffer from a shortage of discs, as subscribers could scoop up these discs by the shovel and store as many as they could. This included new releases, which were very expensive. The clever movie studios refused to give discounts. Therefore, they added a mechanism to the website that promoted various old and lesser-known films, as well as those that brought in more profit. Since visitors themselves didn't even know what they wanted, the website always showed 4 different movies randomly on the homepage. Then they suddenly thought, what if a subscriber sees movies not randomly, but specifically adapted to their tastes? It was mind-blowing. But how do you measure such a vague thing as taste? It turned out it was not that simple. For months, they tried to figure out some solution. Eventually, they came up with a strange thing, like an algorithm that made perfect recommendations from its point of view, but was completely stupid for a real person. In the end, Hastings even enlisted the help of mathematicians, and they figured out how to do it better, and created a murky abracadabra that worked very well, like word of mouth, meaning the subscriber was offered what similar people liked. This algorithm was called collaborative filtering. If 2 people rated 10 movies the same way, then they will likely enjoy other movies that they haven't even seen yet. In short, this miracle system began to direct people to the movies they would have never even thought about. And as a result, people started paying more attention to little-known but worthy releases. Thanks to this, small independent films finally found a way around theaters that had long become slaves to mainstream blockbusters. This recommendation system was called Cinematch. It was like a consultant in a store, only better. Subscribers loved it, and the subscription model started to gain even more momentum. But regular average Americans never started using Netflix for some reason. Only young and wealthy internet geeks subscribed. To reach ordinary Americans, the average middle-class people, a large-scale advertisement was needed. But this required serious money, not just bots to promote on forums. In order to raise funds, they decided to go public with an IPO in 2000. At the time, bankers were already buzzing around Netflix like bees around flowers, offering to take it public. But the company was still unprofitable, and the guys on Wall Street aren't fools and don't allow any paupers into an IPO. They needed to somehow improve their financial performance. To do this, they took a risky step. They blatantly forced customers to link their credit cards to the site and automatically deducted $20 every month. At the time, this seemed like a very aggressive method of taking money. It seemed almost despicable and downright extortionate. But it turned out that customers didn't even resist. In the end, the profits started pouring in. Plus, movie studios finally gave a discount on discs. And eventually, Netflix was finally ready for its IPO. But in the same year, the dot-com bubble suddenly burst and the market crashed. Millions evaporated. Dot-coms were extremely wasteful, with an approach of spend now, survive later. They were throwing money around, and when the bubble burst, they all got burned. Hastings and Randolph watched this with enjoyment, but it also affected them. Wall Street began to avoid any companies even remotely connected to the internet. And as a result, the influx of investments dried up. Hastings tried to convince the public that he was different from everyone else and that he had survived for a reason, and that by 2004, he would have as many as 10 million subscribers. Unlike the dot-coms that had failed, he had a truly working business. Because once people started using it, they couldn't stop. But it was all in vain. It was difficult to explain Netflix's advantages to all these dimwits. Therefore, the IPO had to be postponed, and the company continued to lose money. A lot of money. Losses in 2000 reached a threatening size of $57 million. Therefore, Hastings decided to sell Netflix to its competitor, Blockbuster. This mammoth of a company, which in the 90s was opening new stores almost every day, had destroyed all the small family-owned video rental stores. Blockbuster was 1,000 times larger than Netflix, earning billions and had 9,000 stores worldwide. At a meeting with Blockbuster CEO John Antioco, Hastings offered them a 49% stake for $50 million, out of excitement. However, Antioco could barely contain his laughter. For him, this offer was super silly. Why would a small, unprofitable company like Netflix matter to a business monster like Blockbuster? He, like everyone else, thought that Netflix was just another dot-com company that would burn through money forever, consuming revenue from physical stores. Hastings and Randolph were completely dejected and left the meeting. But then Randolph suddenly became inspired and said, "Hey guys, don't worry, everything's fine. Since they didn't buy us, let's kick their asses in our own way." By the beginning of 2001, they had 400,000 subscribers, but with an annual loss of $40 million. In order to survive, Hastings began ruthlessly firing employees, as there were too many of them. These people grunted, barked, complained, and slammed doors. In short, there was a feeling of despair in the office. 1/3 of the team was fired. Only the most talented and versatile employees remained. Hastings expected the remaining employees to behave badly, but unexpectedly, the atmosphere improved dramatically, and life became easier. But how was this possible? Everyone still had to work twice as hard, but the office was literally boiling with enthusiasm and energy. In some inexplicable way, the remaining 80 people continued to solve all the tasks with unprecedented enthusiasm, just as they had done before. Even Hastings himself was eager to work and said that it felt like everyone was in love with each other. All because all the toxic, stupid, whining, and lazy people had left and stopped poisoning the atmosphere. It turned out that even one idiot was enough to start negatively affecting everyone else like a virus, suppressing enthusiasm and inspiration. Geniuses and hard workers, on the other hand, inspire each other. In general, a culture of superiority emerged. The concentration of talents was off the charts, and the quality of work reached a new level. As a result, by 2002, the business had begun to climb again. Realizing this, Hastings began to lure top stars from other companies. It turned out that many programmers were not interested in sky-high salaries like those offered by Google, Apple, or Facebook, but in a cool environment and interesting tasks. Stars like being surrounded by other stars. These geniuses solved problems non-standardly. For example, when fast delivery was needed, instead of building an expensive network of warehouses across the country, they created some nodes, just 6 rooms the size of a snack bar, from which the discs were immediately sent to someone else, without even returning to the central warehouse. As a result, 90% of movies were simply sent directly to subscribers. And in the end, customers received their discs on the day of ordering, and this super-fast delivery was perceived as some kind of magic. Thanks in large part to this, by the end of 2001, they were approaching 1 million subscribers. In the same year, Netflix became even more in demand. The growth in demand was facilitated by the 9/11 attack, after which people were afraid to leave their homes and instead turned to entertainment, such as watching movies on Netflix. In 2002, Hastings decided to go public again with an IPO. This time, negotiations with investors went smoothly because Netflix was one of the few companies that didn't deflate after the stock market crash. As a result, this IPO instantly brought the company $82 million. They finally stopped being beggars. Among these powerful geniuses, Randolph gradually became the weak link. He no longer fit into such a fierce frenzy and said that he was bored and everything became uninteresting, and he took off from the company. Although his stake was small, it allowed him to never work again for the rest of his life. Hastings continued to refine his elite culture and came up with another cool feature. Usually in companies, everyone licks, sniffs, and kisses the boss's fat ass in different poses. And if you, a worthless nobody, dare to criticize the boss even a little, they will send you to Siberia to clean the toilets. In short, honest people who speak directly to the boss usually become outcasts in companies. But Hastings did the opposite, and criticism became a mandatory part of his meetings. He began to cultivate honesty and encourage disputes. On the day when you remain silent out of fear of the boss, you will have to crawl on all fours. The results were amazing. Instead of flattering each other, employees began to make constructive and extremely reasonable remarks more often, and they even stopped whispering behind each other's backs. Honesty became a foundation through which super innovative solutions sprouted like seeds. But Blockbuster, on the other hand, demonstrated incredible stupidity. Hastings everywhere ridiculed them for being technologically backward. This infuriated them, and in order to give the insolent Hastings a poke in the eye, they tried in every way to unravel all his secrets. They studied the website and planted spies in the warehouses, but could never figure out what people found so special about Netflix. Old movies, which made up a large part of Netflix's business, for some reason, no one at Blockbuster wanted. When Netflix crossed the 1 million subscriber mark in 2003, Blockbuster finally realized it was wrong to keep ignoring the online sphere. And suddenly they decided to plunge deeply into this industry. To do this, they decided to partner with someone. But Blockbuster had an incredibly bad reputation. They were arrogant morons. Fines, high prices, poor selection, dirty stores, and rude treatment of customers. Therefore, making deals was extremely difficult. When they finally rolled out their own website, they pompously declared that Netflix had awakened a sleeping giant that would kick their asses. Against this backdrop, Netflix's stock price suddenly plummeted to $15, losing 60% of its market value in just 1 week. And Blockbuster's website turned out to be an exact copy of Netflix's site. They stole everything outright, all the functions and the interface. And then they started dumping, and the low price began to lure subscribers away from Netflix. They also printed free coupons and spent a fortune on advertising. And as a result, the number of Blockbuster subscribers exceeded 750,000. What took Netflix 4 years, Blockbuster achieved in just 4 months. Hastings had nothing to say to that. And in the end, Blockbuster had a real chance to wipe Netflix off the face of the earth. A gloomy atmosphere prevailed inside Netflix. The press recommended selling Netflix shares. Speculators also played on the decline. All of these investors saw Netflix simply as a huge video subscription store, without realizing that Netflix was something much bigger, like a brain center that creates complex algorithms that increase long-term returns from each subscriber. The company continued to improve in all areas. They called subscribers and collected feedback on the website interface. These helpful comments constantly helped to refine and improve the service. Customers loved it, and the level of unsubscribes was low. And at some point, even ordinary Americans noticed the service. People were subscribing at a rate of almost 3,000 per day. Blockbuster was also pushing full throttle, and by the end of 2005 was close to 2 million subscribers. Everything that Netflix spent 7 years on, cunning Blockbuster shamelessly copied in just 1 day. But they copied everything except the algorithms. Therefore, they could not retain customers. Their website was like a revolving door. Subscribers came and went, and as soon as they stopped pouring a lot of money into advertising, the number of subscribers barely kept up with unsubscribes. Meanwhile, Netflix had already surpassed 3 million subscribers, and it's impossible to pour money into advertising endlessly. In 2005, Blockbuster lost $500 million, and then they had serious problems. While trying to subjugate online, they forgot about their real locations, the number of which decreased by almost half, from 9,000 to 5,000. At that very moment in 2006, YouTube suddenly burst onto the market as a pioneer in streaming. It became clear to everyone that the era of strict content control by movie theaters and paid television was over. Disney also realized that people would watch what they wanted, where they wanted, and when they wanted, and there was nothing they could do about it. They were among the first to start selling movies and TV shows through Steve Jobs' iTunes, offering hits like Lost and Pirates of the Caribbean. To compete on equal terms, Hastings needed a wide selection of movies, but movie studios had given the rights to cable channels. To convince them, he needed at least 6 million subscribers. Inspired by YouTube, Hastings rolled out his own instant video streaming feature in 2007. With its launch came the holy grail of real-time information about viewer behavior, including what they watch, where they skip, when they pause, and when they tune out. This data was also used in recommendation algorithms to even better predict user appetites. Hastings was fascinated by the idea of describing chaotic human behavior in the form of numbers. His obsession with algorithms consumed all his free time. Even during Christmas, he shut himself away from his family and sat with his laptop. And the recommendations were increasingly charming subscribers, with 70% of movies being watched based on them. And the more you watch, the even more accurate these recommendations become. Not like on YouTube, where you accidentally click on something and then get recommended all sorts of nonsense for 6 months. But even that wasn't enough for Hastings. He wanted to make a powerful breakthrough. But there weren't enough people. Only a couple of developers could focus on the algorithm. So in 2006, Hastings launched the Netflix Prize Scientific Competition with a $1 million prize for improving the algorithm by 10%. And he provided such a giant real-world data set that the scientific community had never seen before. The press widely publicized it, and in the next 3 years, 40,000 participants from 186 countries registered for the competition. The pursuit of $1 million attracted an entire army of scientists, and they all began scratching their heads, trying to predict human behavior. They scratched, and after 2 years finally improved the algorithm by 10.06%. The results were described in such an extremely incomprehensible lecture that nobody understood anything, and the recommendation system became so complex that it could read information about people's tastes even without a rating system. In 2008, Hastings tried his best to embed his software into all sorts of devices: phones, laptops, gaming consoles, and media players. Eventually, they managed to integrate the program into LG Electronics and Roku receivers, allowing them to stream directly from the internet onto big screens. They also added it to Microsoft's Xbox, providing access to 10 million gamers. This success opened the floodgates for similar deals. Over the next 3 years, they added the program to over 200 different types of devices. At first, the majority of the catalog was low-quality junk. Everything changed when they struck a deal with Starz Entertainment, which gave them access to Sony and Disney's movie libraries. Success bred more success, and partners attracted more partners. The 2008 global crisis also played in their favor because people suddenly started using an increasing number of mobile devices, which now had the ability to stream video. The Netflix app was everywhere, and subscribers grew at a rate of 10,000 per day, surpassing 10 million in 2009. Meanwhile, Blockbuster was struggling to keep up, and they had to focus on saving their physical stores by selling all sorts of things like clothes, magazines, books, and candies. However, this strategy only made things worse, and the company ultimately went bankrupt. By 2010, their stock price had fallen below $1, and they were delisted from the stock exchange. Hastings was thrilled that the mammoth that had been trying to kill him for so long had finally collapsed on its own. Suddenly, there was no shortage of attention. People in the film industry wanted to discuss their share of revenue from online video, and they started making deals to show everything: movies, popular shows, and series. Hastings even got the right to show content from Paramount Pictures, Lionsgate, and Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer for $800 million. Netflix became comparable in size to the largest cable operators, reaching 44% of the entire online movie business in 2011. Film studios and television suddenly realized that they themselves had brought a beast into their ranks and began demanding that Netflix buy movies in bulk, not just selectively successful ones. Competition intensified, and to avoid depending on any assholes, their own content was needed. By this time, Hastings had been named Businessman of the Year by Fortune and praised as a guru of the new generation. Against this backdrop, the value of stocks at $300 seemed bulletproof. However, Hastings managed to ruin everything. He suddenly, for some reason, split the rental and streaming businesses into separate companies in 2011, Netflix for streaming and Quickster for DVD delivery. This forced people to manage subscriptions on two different websites and pay twice for two subscriptions. This decision was so dumb that panic spread across social media in an instant, and people were outraged. Hastings quickly admitted his mistake and posted an apology on YouTube, but he was bombarded with negative comments and looked so pathetic that even TV comedians mocked him. Someone even compared this split to the necessity of ordering bread from one store and meat from another. It was extremely foolish to force subscribers to have two accounts and search for movies in two different places. In just a few quarters, Netflix lost 800,000 subscribers, and stocks plummeted by 75%. From an all-time high of $305 to a miserable $65. Former Blockbuster investor Carl Icahn circled around Netflix like a shark, biting off large chunks of stocks here and there until he amassed a 10% stake. He thirsted to infiltrate management and overthrow it. After this debacle, Hastings disappeared from public view for 2 years and devoted himself to oblivion. He continued to improve his favorite algorithms. The statistics accumulated over 15 years revealed a strange pattern. It turned out that subscribers are more excited about TV shows than movies. Moreover, they binge-watch them, like several episodes at once, or even a whole season in one go. It also turned out that viewers have a particular interest in director David Fincher, actor Kevin Spacey, and the political drama genre. Despite the ridicule of the bosses of major studios, Hastings invested $100 million in producing 2 seasons of the series House of Cards, which ultimately brought together Fincher, Spacey, and politics. And when the series was ready in 2013, all episodes were released at once so that people could binge-watch it. The results exceeded all expectations, and House of Cards became the most viewed series on the platform. In the end, $500 million was invested in it for 6 seasons, as they knew exactly how many people would watch it. The same principle was used to launch the series Black Mirror and Stranger Things. It was a self-reinforcing mechanism. The better the content, the more subscribers, and the more subscribers, the more money for creating good content. In 2016, Netflix released around 126 original series and films and expanded to 130 countries, including Russia. In 2018, Netflix captured 15% of the world's internet traffic and surpassed television and even YouTube in the United States. And thanks to the quarantine in 2020, they hit the jackpot, with a record-breaking 37 million people subscribing that year and the overall audience surpassing 200 million. Now, everyone seems to be making series like crazy: Disney, HBO Max, Apple TV Plus, and Amazon Prime. They've done well, but they don't have the incredible user experience that Netflix does. And they're still a long way from catching up to Netflix's level, since Netflix has algorithms, which are their main secret weapon. Hastings changed the way half of humanity watches movies by giving viewers only what they want, even faster than they realize they want it. If 20 years ago, users only watched 2% of recommended films, now it's up to a whopping 80%. This is a technological advantage that is simply impossible to copy. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more thought-provoking content.